Hi, this is Zainab here, your P6 tutor, with some last minute wise words, if you like, for your P6 exam just a few days before you go into the exam. Now, I'm hoping by now you guys have already done everything that I've been telling you to do. So you have revised the content and you have been looking at questions as well and learning from that. One thing I would say, and this is something I said to you at the revision time, the smaller taxes which take a bit of less time, do those first. So I hope you have already revised things like VAT. Yeah, VAT is extremely important. There are some basic elements of VAT, for instance, things like tax point, registration, deregistration, sale of a business, how is it dealt with under VAT. And then you have some additional bits and pieces which are a bit more trickier than the basics, things like partial exemption or things like the capital goods scheme, and then we have the land and building and how to deal with land and building as far as VAT is concerned. So this is one thing that you need to make sure is that you do the smaller topics first. So you've done VAT, tick that off. The second smaller topic that we have is stamp duty. Stamp duty expected in every exam for a few marks, and it's extremely simple and straightforward because it's only relevant when you have a sale of land and building and when there's a sale of shares. But know that who pays it, how much, how to calculate it, and remember to include it whenever the examiner has asked for the tax implications of a transaction. And then, of course, when you look at another small topic, which I would say comes up often because it is mixed up with the other topics, is national insurance. Make sure you're extremely comfortable with how to deal with national insurance. VAT, stamp duty, and national insurance are three things that I always say these are very easy, very simple, and straightforward, and it is impossible that we cannot get those easy marks. And then, of course, if you look at our bigger topics, I'll start with things like IHT, know how to deal with lifetime transfers. What are the different reliefs that are available on lifetime transfers? Don't forget basic things like annual exemption. I mean, when I go through scripts, one of the things that I see is that students forget the basic things, and you get marks for basic stuff. You might remember me saying this in the revision course as well. Always remember to state the obvious. If you know that you have one person who's given a gift to another person, it's a pet, well then mention it, it's a pet. And what happens to a pet? There's no tax to pay now, but there will be tax to pay later on. So mention those obvious things. Sometimes what happens is that because we're studying this and it is so obvious to us, we think, there's no point in writing it down. But remember, the marker cannot give you a mark unless if you have written it down. They're not going to assume that you know what the item is and what the treatment of the item is. You need to be there up front and say, okay, this is what it is, and that's the only way you will be able to get your marks. So on IHT, lifetime transfers, know how to deal with them, know how to spot them to begin with. Then, of course, valuation. You have different types of assets. How do you value? Don't forget things like diminution in value principle or even related party and related property rules. These are often mixed in together. So it's very, very important that you're comfortable with those. And then we look at reliefs. I mean, realistically, if I were to look at the reliefs that are available for IHT, there are four huge major ones. You have BPR, you have APR, you have QSR, and you have DTR. With all of these four, make sure you're able to spot them, make sure you're able to calculate them and explain them. These are four reliefs that are relevant in IHT and extremely important. And then when you look at the death estate is similar. You need to think about the reliefs that are available. You need to think about the format of that, what is allowable expenses, what is not allowable expense. Don't forget charity, the reduced rate for charity. So make sure you're comfortable with being able to calculate the baseline amount, because that's very, very important as far as the charity rate is concerned. Now, often with IHT, you get a CGT mixed in together as well. So be comfortable to deal with IHT, CGT aspects of the same transaction, of the same item that you've been given. With CGT, the calculation of the gain itself, remember all the different variations that you have learned, be it shares, be it leases, be it transfer between spouse, be it transfer between connected companies, be it part disposal, extremely important. And then talk about reliefs. Remember, make sure you know all of your reliefs. You have PPR, you have letting, you have rollover, holdover, gift relief, incorporation relief, EIS relief, and cease reinvestment relief. So you can see I've mentioned 8 over here, and you must make sure that you're comfortable with all of these because any one of them could come up. Yeah. And then, of course, the calculation of the gains. How do you calculate the gain? What happens with entrepreneurs relief? What happens with investors relief? What happens with a residential property? Or if it's not a residential property, how do you do those calculations? Extremely important. And then on topic wise, if I think about another topic which is huge, income tax. I mean, income tax is huge, guys. There is so much in income tax, and you must make sure that you're prepared because this is one topic that can be really complicated. Calculation of income tax, know how to deal with non-savings, how to deal with savings, the no rate bans for savings, the starting ban for savings, and then of course you have dividends, the no rate ban for dividends. Income tax calculations has become more and more complicated and involved. So there is a place here where the examiner can complicate the questions on income tax because there's so much you can bring in. Make sure you know how to calculate the incomes, be it trading income, be it employment income, be it property income. Remember, with property income this time around, we have something very new with property income, and that is with the restriction of the finance cost. Only 75% are allowable. The remaining 25% will receive a relief at 20% against the income tax liability. So if you think I'm talking about Greek right now, go back, open your books and look it up because that is something new, and who knows, it might just come up. But with regards to employment income, for instance, make sure you're comfortable with things like the share schemes, the different share options that are available, what happens with redundancy pay, how this is dealt with. Another very important element of income tax is overseas. And again, this is something that can also come in capital gains tax as well, is overseas aspects. How do you deal with overseas income? How do you deal with overseas gains? Make sure you're comfortable with residency rules. They may seem very simple, but they're highly examinable even at the P6 stage. And then, of course, domiciliation. You have different types of domiciliation for IHT. IHT has one additional type of domiciliation, which is the deemed domiciliation, and that is not relevant to income tax, for instance. So make sure you're comfortable with how to deal with domiciliation, the remittance basis, often examined and sometimes with numbers, sometimes just with explanation. Make yourself extremely comfortable with being able to pick out whether remittance basis is available or not. And I think lastly, the only thing I would talk about is corporation tax. And with corporation tax, you have the basics of corporation tax. For example, how do you calculate the incomes? You have trading income, you have overseas income. And then, of course, you have some additional elements, things that you see like R&D, how to deal with intangible assets, how to deal with patents. These are highly examinable. But don't forget the basics. Make sure you know how to calculate things like capital allowance is very, very important. And then with corporation tax, you have things like groups as well. With groups, you have the 51% associated groups, then you have 75% group relief, you have 75% capital gains group, and you have consortium. And of course you have VAT groups. So there are 5 groups that you need to make yourself comfortable with. How, what, why, what are the tax effect, how does it work, in what scenarios are we going to form a group. When you have a group situation and you have one company that is leaving the group, in the other sense, what will happen is that the parent will be selling the shares. Think about things like SSE. Remember, SSE is available if the parent company held at least a minimum of 10% in the last 24 for 12 months out of the last 24 months. But there are conditions. The company also must be a trading company. So make sure you make yourself comfortable with things like SSE. Another thing that you got to be careful about is the degrouping charges. Very, very important. It can easily be slipped into a question and you don't even realize about it. So I've tried to give you a sort of like a snapshot of what are the, you know, the different things that you know, give you a little bit of a tick off, if you like. But lastly, I would say, guys, make sure you don't leave any topic. We cannot walk into the exam knowing 100% of everything. So don't stress yourself out in this last few days about saying, okay, now I don't know all this and I have to sit down and learn everything all over again. No, don't panic. Do what you can, but just make sure that when you enter the exam hall, you know a little bit about every topic. You have an idea about every topic. You've ticked off every single topic. You've spent time on every single topic. Don't ignore any areas of the syllabus. So when you walk into the exam, that's what I want you to do is know a little bit of everything and just, you know, just go with the flow. Do the best you can. There will be things you will not know, but don't panic. If you don't know something, it's okay. Leave a little bit of space and do what you can. Often what happens is that a student will look at a question and say, oh God, this is a topic I know nothing about, so I'm not going to attempt it. Big, huge mistake. Attempt it. Do whatever you can. There is something you must remember. I mean, if you look at IHT, such a huge topic. If you look at income tax, such a huge topic. There must be something you must know. Attempt it, because you get marks for stating the basics. If the question had required calculation of income tax and you didn't know how to calculate income tax and you just wrote personal allowance is this much, you will get that half mark for writing the personal allowance. So simple things like that. Don't give up. That's the point. You do not give up and you attempt every single question. I hope this video has been a little bit helpful, and this is me just trying to reach out to you in these last minutes before your exam, the last few days, and trying to wish you all the best for your exams and good luck. I'll wait to hear from you guys.